Hello everybody. Today we'll be creating a new shape in our drawing app, a pentagon. Then we will also animate the changes of the path inside of a shape using CABasicAnimation. We will also animate changing the color by making the transition from one color to another animated, as well as adding a rotating animation while the change is happening. If we want to animate the change of a path, meaning from a rectangle to a circle, we can no longer have different classes for the different shapes. So now shape will be our only class, and inside we'll have different forms. And it's the changing of that form that we will animate. This doesn't mean that we are getting rid of the other classes, rather we're transforming them into an extension that we will use in the draw method of shape to determine what path to draw. A good thing is that now we don't have to repeat the stroking and the filling of the path. Now that our shape is ready, we need to fix our canvas view controller. When we create the shapes, we will always create a shape, not a different class, and what we'll do is just change the form. Oh, I forgot to make the form internal, the variable. We'll do the same for every shape. Let's run to see that nothing has changed with our new implementation. So I can still double tap to add. I can drag the views. With our pinching gesture, I can scale the figure, I can remove them. I can still change the color. Now we are ready to animate changing the form of a shape. To make it easier to work animating the changes, let's move all of the gesture code from the main file of shape, and we'll move it to an extension. Due to the fact that the gestures are now being executed in an extension in a separate file, we will need to remove the private from several variables in our shape class. Let's now make the first important change. We're no longer going to leave the drawing of the shape to UI Bezier path. Instead, we're going to draw with a CAShapeLayer. So this comes from CoreAnimation, not from UI Kit. We add the shape layer just once, and instead of adding it to the view, we add it to the layer of the view. Now, although we're doing a different implementation, we don't have to change that much. ChapeLayer has a path, a CG path, one that we can create from UI Bezier path by calling the CG path variable. The layer also has a fill and stroke color, and just like we did with UI Bezier path, UI color has a CG color variable. So we set the fill and the stroke color of the layer using this. And for the line width, CAShapeLayer has an equally named variable for that. Let's run and prove that with CAShapeLayer we get the exact same result. As you can see, our shapes are rendered the same. We can still apply all of the transforms, as well as change the color. With our shape layer set up, we can now proceed to animating when we change the form. So on the did instead of calling setNeedsDisplay, we will call a method of our own. At the end of our method, we will call setNeedsDisplay, and the animation will be the first thing that's executed in this method. Now, we check if the shape layer had a previous path. If not, it means that the shape is being created. We do not want to animate that. For the animation, we're going to be using CABasicAnimation. You create that with a key path. This is not a random string. It's actually a given set of values that you can add here. And unfortunately, there's no enum. So you just have to know these values. Since here I'm going to be changing the path of the CG shape, that's the key path that I'm using. Animation has from and to values, so from value will be the previous path, and the new path is the one that was assigned in the form variable. We specify a duration, and we add the animation to the layer. Moving to the canvas view controller, we need to trigger this form change. In a previous exercise, we enabled a menu controller when we long press on a shape. We're going to take advantage of that by adding a new action to change the shape. Let's see how this goes. So we have two shapes here. Let's change the shape of this one. Okay, we have our animation. We can scale, we can remove them, nothing changes. And this was just by changing the path. We can also do it with a square. And let's see with a triangle. Perfect. I added this new shape, a pentagon. Here is the code. I'm not going to show how I created it since there's nothing of a challenge here. It's just knowing where to place the points where we're drawing the lines with the UI basic path. I just added this so we have more shapes to play with. Now, in the shape, we consider the additional case, a pentagon, which is just adding something to an enum, and in the switch, we call the method that I just created with the path of the pentagon. Another thing that would be nice changing is right now we're forcing every shape to change to a circle. Instead, we want to let the user decide what they want the shape to be changed to. And for that, let's use an action sheet. So when the user taps change shape, we'll present an action sheet and give the user the choices of changing the selected shape to another one. Let's try now. Okay, and now the user has an action sheet to choose between different shapes. Okay, now moving on, we want to also animate when we change the color of a shape. So similarly, we in the did set of the color, we call another method instead of just that needs display. We will be using again CABasicAnimation for this. We are modifying the fill color of the shape, and that's the key path that we are going to use, fill color. When dealing with CABasicAnimation, you need to be careful with the from and to values. They are declared as any, but it really depends on what you're declaring for the key path. Since fill color is a CG color, make sure that you're passing a CG color to these two values. Here the animation is not going to be that easy. Let's run and see why not. So let's add a shape and you can see how it started in black, and that's because this time it is animating the color change from the beginning. Let's also change the color. And because the color picker calls the delegate while the picker is presented, we're not seeing the color change. So we have to do several changes to remedy this behavior. The first thing is in our canvas view controller. That one is the one conforming to the UI color picker view controller delegate. So instead of changing the color of the shape each time a new color is selected, we will just do it when the picker is dismissed. Okay, that fixes the UI color picker problem. Now we have to address the issue where the color of a shape that's created is being animated. So for that we need a different color. It will be the fill color and it will start in new. Then in the did set of our color, we can use the value of fill color to decide if we just set need display or animate the color change. Let's make the animation longer so we can see clearly what's going on, and let's run. Okay, so the initial animation of the color is gone, which is good. Let's choose another color. It is animating, but did you notice how the view turned red before turning back to green and then animating to red? That's because the set need display is happening before the animation. So what we need is to know when the animation ended, and then we will call set need display. For this, we don't have a completion block in CABasicAnimation, but we can add one with CATransaction. So this is a little bit different than with UI view animations. What you do is before you start animating, you call CATransaction.begin. You don't instantiate anything. After adding the animation, you call commit. And before animating, you set the completion block with, again, CATransaction dot set completion block. And in this completion block, which we know now that it's called when the animation finishes, that's when we are going to set the fill color and call set needs display. Let's try now. And let's change the color. Okay, we got rid of the sadness display that was happening at the beginning, but now notice that nearing the end of the animation, there's a flickering between the animation and the field color. So there's still something going on. I was also missing using the field color in draw, but I don't think this will make a difference. Let's try. Okay, let's change the color again. Red. Okay, we're still getting the flickering. So instead of fighting with this animation, what we can do is add another animation that lasts less than this one, and then we call setNeeds display. That way the color animation will end after setNeeds display is applied with the color, and there will be no flickering. The other animation that we're going to create is one where the view will start rotating while the color changes. For this one, we are going to use another animation from CoreAnimation. This time it's going to be the CAKeyFrameAnimation, which instead of passing just one value, we're going to pass an array of values. Just like with CABasicAnimation, we need to pass a specific key path. In this case, it will be transform.rotate.y. The rotation is done in radians, and the values need to be CG float. Again, just like with CABasicAnimation, be careful here. The values of CAKeyFrameAnimation are an array of any, but you do need it to conform to the type that this needs. So the transform.rotation.y coordinate is in CG float. So that's what we're going to do. We want to rotate our view 3 times. So we'll go from 0 to 6 pi. Let's also add this animation to the shape layer. This is going to cause an error, but I want to show you what will happen and how to fix it. Okay, let's add a shape. Let's change the color. And oh, it should be rotating. I must have made a mistake with the keypad. Yes, I don't think it's rotate, it's rotation. Let's run again. Let's change the color of the circle. Notice what's happening. It's rotating from the edge. This happens because CAShapeLayer doesn't have the same bounds as the view. We just added the CAShapeLayer and are painting a path. We could make it so that the bounds are consistent with the frame each time we resize it, but it's easier to just setting this animation to the layer. Let's try now. Change the color. And there we have it. We have our flipping animation. The flickering is still happening, but that's because we need to set the completion block so that it's executed after the rotating animation finishes and it doesn't wait for the color animation. Let's try now this. Let's try changing the color, get our rotation, and the color changes. Try this several more times. Okay, apparently good. One last time. Let's do it with a bright color like yellow. Okay, good. And that was all. CABasicAnimation with CAShapeLayer provides some very cool and easy to do animations like changing the path, the color, and the transform. You just have to know which values to pass in the front end too, but other than that, the system does a lot of the heavy lifting, like changing the path as you are seeing right now. Hope you liked it. Bye.